of the thought in the last few years has been to give teachers pay raises because they think that's going to help improve outcomes. It really hasn't.
It's not. It's some really stupid shit. Everything about it was stupid and wrong.
A couple weeks ago, the Education Trust Fund budget was passed by the Senate, and has it passed the House yet?
There were some developments late this week, so I cannot say for certain whether it has. Yeah, I'll be looking that up, actually.
So, it was a big budget, biggest in the history of the state, which is, saying biggest in the history of the state is really not that strange, because presumably every year is going to be the biggest because of inflation, right? You're going to increase by at least the rate of inflation, presumably or hopefully. But it is a multi-billion-dollar budget. And there was a $15 million line item that really stuck in the craw of one Justin Bogey at 1819 News. That $15 million line item is a proposed minimum wage for school support staff. So think lunch ladies, janitors, secretaries, folks like that, right? And you're going to want to make sure you're sitting down for this, folks. A minimum wage for school support staff of $15 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy, but... Now, somehow, Justin is able to keep his composure enough to talk about this real problem on the radio. So let's hear what he had to say on a radio program in Birmingham.
The $15 million appropriation would go towards a quote-unquote support staff salary stipend. What the heck is this?
Yeah, this is something that's really kind of picked up steam the last few weeks. But basically... some of your education support employees, bus drivers, janitorial workers, cafeteria workers, secretaries, those types of jobs are, they're basically pushing for a minimum wage, a $15 minimum wage. And so, this, obviously, that we haven't had a minimum wage besides the federal wage for those types of employees before, but really the AEA has really gotten behind this, and they're leading the effort to presumably when this bill crosses over to the House and it starts moving through the House, then get that put in there. They're trying to set up a salary scale for all of these hourly employees, basically. I think it raises interesting questions. No one's saying that these aren't valuable employees, that they don't in some ways keep schools running. Obviously you can't have a school if you can't get students there and you can't feed them and those types of things, but really the issue of the state sort of deciding which hourly employees are more important than others, i.e. the private sector. The private sector minimum wage is $7.50 an hour, and we're not talking about raising it for all private sector employees. So, is government kind of using their power, and obviously AEA has a large constituency and a powerful voting bloc. So are they using their power to try to get these increases in hourly wages for those employees?
Now, he says in there, no one is saying these aren't valuable employees in questioning whether or not they deserve $15 an hour, but that's explicitly what he's doing, right?
And also questioning the very need for a state minimum salary or, hourly pay matrix.
Right.
Questioning why there would need to be a minimum for them, a state minimum.
Yeah.
And just for context, teachers, nurses, counselors, librarians, there is a state salary matrix in Alabama that districts have to follow or go above and beyond. Right. You have to at least pay the matrix, and it has it clearly laid out, your years of experience, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through, and how much you would make with the appropriate degree. Support staff do not have that. And so it varies sometimes pretty, significantly between school districts from, district to district. There are over 100 school districts in the state of Alabama. So that means, over 100 different ways in which these support staff are being paid. And, they say that's a bad thing, that we want that folks would want to change that. That's revealing, I think, to question.
Well, yeah, well, and this is the real slimy thing, right? Because he's not, I'm not questioning that they're valuable employee. I'm not questioning their value. I'm not saying they don't deserve that necessarily. I'm just asking, I'm just saying, should they? I don't know. And that's so annoying to me.
Right.
Just say it with your damn chest.
Right. You literally are questioning. That's
right.
Exactly what you're doing. Just be honest about it and say, you don't want to have those people be paid well.
Right. And the issue with this is and they mention kind of derisively that, schools have the summer off. And so, a lot of these support staff aren't going to be working during the summer. But I could, somebody still has to clean the schools during the summer.
It depends. It depends. Just like, with the certified employees, some support staff are 9-month or considered 9-month, 10-month, 11-month, or 12-month. And it just depends on, the situation. I know schools are off for the summer, quote unquote, but anyone who's in the school universe knows that schools are still pretty busy places throughout the summer. There's summer school, there's summer learning programs, there's summer feeding programs. There are, different community things that happen at the schools, right? Churches and community organizations rent the school buildings throughout the summer. A lot happens. But really what irritates me the most is like, wow, are they doing politics?
Right. Yeah.
Are people actually arguing that they should do something with government money?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that is happening, and it's called politics, and it's what happens every day in Montgomery.
That was so crazy to me. Is the AEA using their power to try to get raises for those employees? Like, yes, you dumbass.
That's
obviously.
What they're supposed to do.
That's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Well, they're doing the same thing that you freaks are doing, except you are trying to use your power and the Coke money that backs you to try to make sure that these people get less than they deserve. And so these people are coming together through a professional organization. The AEA doesn't like to be called a union. And instead of some billionaire throwing their money against things that will help working people, these are working people to come together, giving a little bit every paycheck, and using that collectively to, use their power to advocate for their lives to be better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and, schools should not be contributing to poverty. All right. We know, as we mentioned earlier in this show, we talked about the ways in which poverty impacts educational outcomes of children. Why would school employees be condemned to poverty?
Right.
If we know in education the impact that poverty plays on children, right? Why would we doom the families of custodians and cafeteria workers and bus drivers and all the other critical components of a functioning school? He admits, we're not going to have school without them.
Right.
That's exactly right. You won't have school without them, right? They are there to take care of the state's children.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do, and they allow functioning public schools to happen. They're asking for a living wage. That is not a lot to ask for. They're asking for a minimum wage, right? So that districts can't undercut each other so bad that you've got districts that are paying just terrible wages to folks.
Right.
And I think this is a positive step in a lot of ways. I think it's going to improve people's lives.
Absolutely. It's going to
improve the community, right? Because these folks are going to have a little bit more money to spend. Maybe some of them will be able to live off their one job and not have to work, as many jobs, because a lot of these support staff are working 2, 3, 4 jobs. They're working for the school system mostly to get benefits, and then having to do something else to get cash to actually pay their bills. And so, it's just gross that that's even a problem with these people.
Yeah, it's so gross. And so later in that segment, they start to deride schools' performance, and so Let's play this clip and see if this argument is a bit more compelling than, just kind of shyly saying, oh, I'm not saying they're not valuable. I'm just asking questions. Let's see if this argument has a little bit more heft.
We've been dumping more and more money into education for the last decade or so, really longer than that. They've seen huge increases in their budget. We really haven't seen different results. And part of the thought in the last few years has been to give teachers pay raises because that helps. In theory, they think that's going to help improve outcomes. It really hasn't proven to do so in other states that have done it. It's not working here. Obviously there's some aspect of that where you want to retain your best teachers, but when you're giving across the board raises, but something that's sort of missed in that, pretty much every time, I think it's 5 raises in 6 years for teachers, but oftentimes these hourly employees are included in those pay raises. So, I think there's a legitimate question of whether or not a lot of these people would already be making close to $15 an hour anyways. And obviously some of that's dependent on what district you're in, what city you're in, those types of things. But if you just look at the averages, they're already making close to $15 an hour, and that's assuming that they work 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, which
they don't.
No school operates at those kinds of hours. So, but again, it's really down to the state kind of picking winners and losers here, and choosing to pay state employees or quasi-state employees a higher hourly wage than a lot of private sector people are making.
Yeah, so there were...
This is some really stupid shit, I just got to say.
I mean, you wonder how much he believes this kind of stuff or how much he's just putting on the act. And you also have to wonder...
One, because, there's right-wingers out there who have some, intellectual might,
right,
at least to some degree. Or, there are right-wingers out there with at least arguments.
You also have to wonder how much he gets paid for this nonsense. Yeah. Because presumably he's making more than $15 an hour, right?
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, everything about it was stupid and wrong.
Well,
frankly.
So let's go point by point. The first thing that he said is look, man, the Republicans took over the state legislature in 2011, and since then they've just been throwing money at the education system, and shucks, it just hasn't gotten better.
It's funny how they always forget about the first half of that decade, and they focus on the second half of that decade where there has been consistent increases in the budget. They forget about what happened before that, which was Alabama had some of the steepest cuts to public education in the entire country. Some of the steepest in the entire country. Very deep cuts to public education in the state of Alabama took place for several years. And so the last 5 or 6 years where there have been some, positive growth each year has really just been catching up. It's just catching up from previous austerity, is what it is. And to say nothing of the actual needs in the state. And so there's a whole conversation to be had there about, well, what is good funding? What is adequate funding? You're pretending as if we're throwing money at it right now. So presumably you think they are overfunded. You think schools are overfunded in the state of Alabama.
Right.
Or if not, at least, appropriately funded. And so, what about the needs in Alabama? Does every school have the counselors it needs and the librarians it needs? Does every special education student in the state of Alabama have access to the instructional assistance that they need? I'm just asking questions.
Right.
Is every playground safe in the state of Alabama? Is every water supply in these schools safe? Do they have nurses in these schools? What about social workers? What about those? Do we have any of those? So, there's a lot you could get into when you're talking about funding of education. We don't even have universal pre-K. It's 2023, and we don't even have universal pre-K access in the state of Alabama.
Right.
That's a true shame. It's a shame, and it negatively impacts our communities and our families. And that's the sort of policy agenda that these folks are pushing.
Mm-hmm. The other argument that he's making is that, they've just got it so much better than private sector employees. He mentioned that 5 of the last 6 years they've gotten raises, and the host is like stunned by this. And in his article about this, Justin says that few private sector hourly employees could say the same about getting 5 raises in the last 6 years. And that's actually that's really not true, because that's a fact of the matter question. They either hourly employees are getting raises similar to these education workers in Alabama, or they're not. And we can just look at it, and they are. In the private sector, wages have risen faster than wages have risen in the education sector in Alabama. So just as a fact of the matter, he is incorrect. He is incorrect. Just in the last year, when they got a 4% pay raise, hourly wages in the private sector rose by 4.8%. Right? And so this is the
And that's before we factor in inflation, right? Where these wages are not even keeping up with the increased cost of living.
Right. In the private sector and the public sector, these are actually effective wage cuts. But this is the senior policy and budget analyst, and this is just such a quick claim that he's willing to make, presumably without having done the slightest bit of research. It is really bizarre to be willing to say.
I think I've shat out more sophisticated analysis of Alabama schools than this guy. What a joke.
And then he says, I do wonder why the discussed proposal is for government employees who are part of the powerful lobby, when too little is being done to support the private sector.
You oppose raising the minimum wage for them.
I mean, it's just crazy.
I agree. We should have at least a bare minimum $15 hour minimum wage across the board. Private sector, public sector, whoever.
Right.
You are against that. You are against letting cities do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah. I mean,
don't come at me with that. No, that's slimy. Ridiculous.
Yeah, like just throwing private sector employees up as a shield so that public sector employees don't get pay raises.
Right, just to stoke resentment amongst sectors of the working class, of which you are not part of, and which you're not an ally of. You're not a friend to the working class.
Yeah. Really crazy stuff. Crazy stuff there.
Well, support staff in Alabama's education system absolutely do deserve a pay raise. They deserve a minimum pay matrix. They deserve a fair step raise policy, because that was another issue I dealt with a lot in the school system, where because they did not have the same system as the certified employees, they didn't necessarily have the same promises in terms of step increases.
Right.
And where you landed on the step schedule could be anybody's guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so fair, transparent policies when it comes to pay raises and step increases, that's needed.
Right.
And I think that's not a lot to ask for the folks who keep our schools functioning and running every day.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project. And you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.